Yeah. It's just most of us saw the sign.
Hey, Greg.
All
right.
Man, this is like
We got a full house.
stellar.
You know why? It's because I promised popcorn. That's what it
You
is.
did?
Yeah, totally.
That's really good popcorn.
Um, does everyone here know each other? That's a good first question. I know most people here do, but I just wanted to make sure.
I forget you.
Right.
Oh, right, you're Ryan, okay. I don't know, your hair is different, you got it back.
I'm always wearing a hat. So.
Okay. And Ken, you
Yeah.
haven't been with us necessarily in previous months. Does everyone know Ken Miller?
Oh, yeah, well, Kenny's been here.
Yeah, okay, okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure. Does anybody have any updates they wanted to share?
Didn't quite hear you.
Oh, does anyone have any updates they wanted to share?
What would you consider an update? An opinion about something or?
I think if you got something, you know.
Yeah,
time to say it.
if you had,
Open the floor.
yeah, we can do some open floor for the first, I think we had 10 minutes in here for that.
Earlier you had George Franzen and he mentioned numerous things that might be core with the zoning ordinance that may or may not get passed. And I wondered, especially in the agricultural parts of it, is this board gonna try and be sure or ask or whatever the case may be, the town board to see that before they pass anything, that it does go to Ag and Markets to get their opinion about it?
Fair question. What's the procedure usually for that?
Well,
I'm happy to answer that
Yeah,
question.
okay,
So the board did solicit a courtesy review from Ag and Markets. So we received that some time ago. And then George Friends, who's helping with the ag plan, also provided a review with an eye to Ag and Markets. So we have that as well as the information that Nan Stolzenberg has supplied us, so.
So when did Ag and Markets do the review?
It was months ago now. I think we got that in February or March, was that right? Ken?
I was gonna say.
No, July.
March or April, okay, early in the year,
Was it
first quarter of the
that
year or
early?
so.
No, I thought it was later. Okay.
Well,
It would seem like.
And we can share that with you.
It would seem like the changes that you've made, it may ought to go back to them.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah, possibly, I think. Like I said, I'd be happy to share their letter. I don't think we've changed it in ways that really affect the information that they provided us, so. But that's something you can consider certainly. I don't think-
how long did it take them when you first solicited a review from
I think
them?
we solicited it like last fall. It took them a
So it
little while.
took 6 months or something?
Yeah.
Well, that really would call for another review, because the Health Zoning Commission was even done with this work last fall.
So,
Now,
Yeah, it was after, they were-
since we're talking.
it was after that final draft.
yeah,
So probably, so maybe it was, you know, I didn't bring my computer, it's on that.
The Zoning
I
Commission.
think it's worth looking at actually the response that Ag and Marcus provided us. And the changes that we made as a result of that, and, you know, sort of the nature of.
Nan is a consultant, she's been doing a lot of work since February, right?
Exactly.
Ken, what's the document that you have right there?
The one you sent us,
The one, but sorry, there's a lot of documents that have been
Okay.
sent, so I wanted to so that I can reference it accurately in the notes, I'm just wondering which document you are referencing.
Well, I think he was
Is it-
referencing the draft zoning law.
Okay, is that what he's holding there? No,
No.
I think those
It's
are
that
those
thing.
we sent out.
Farmland protection options.
okay, great, so that's the farmland protection document that I just sent, okay. I didn't know if you were holding like George France's review of the,
No, I
Okay.
read it,
okay, great,
he had quite a good number of concerns on there. I don't know if they're all taken care of or not,
okay,
especially since we don't have, I don't have, I guess, seeing as I can't find it, a copy, what the zoning law says now. And last meeting,
So that's
according to your agenda, not to go into your business, but according to your agenda, you had quite a number of resolutions to add or change in that. So it's,
So that's absolutely correct, and we did work through those changes, we modified it a bit, and then we accepted those. We are still working on it, and we will be making final changes and then providing an updated document for the public to review. And I do want to point out that the map also needs to be updated, and we'll be posting that soon. And that'll be available to the public for the public hearing that we hold.
we allow enough time for
Yeah, we'll
full
do it.
review of it by
Yeah.
people, because
Yep.
I don't know about everybody, but I know I'm working pretty hard and I don't have as much time to sit and read. I probably won't read the whole thing anyway. I like to read quite a bit of it, especially the agricultural part.
Yeah, we'll give advance notice.
so, sorry, I'm trying to capture all of this accurately in our notes. It sounds like it would be helpful for this group to have a copy of Ag and Markets review of the draft zoning. And so you'll send that to the group, right? And
I'll send it to you and. you
I can
it.
distribute it, yep. But then is there consensus that we want to seek another review by Ag and Markets of the latest version of the zoning and or I also heard reviewing George's comments and making sure that all of those have been addressed in the zoning. Yes,
If our job as an ag committee is to make recommendations to the town board and advise them.
Mhm.
Then we should maybe make a motion to have the final review of the final draft reviewed by Ag and Markets
Sure.
before the town votes on it.
I don't think it always takes so long. I remember when we sent stuff to them, it came back faster than 6 months.
Well, Monica, in the old days, I guess, over in Ulysses, they turned it around pretty quick. within
I
a
know,
week.
but they seem to be short-staffed and
They're
they've
short-staffed.
told us that, and that if they actually in fact have told us that because we have George involved, they don't see the need to be involved.
Hmm,
So, because George's job is to review from their perspective and the Ag and Markets law.
So they're.
But we can always ask,
They're subcontracted with him to review it, so if we got him, just straight to the.
yeah.
George is not an employee or he's not contracted with Ag and Markets.
It sounds like he might be.
No, but the review that he does is based on the Ag District law, so,
And there's no confidence in it, but it doesn't hurt to send it to them.
no, I don't think it hurts to send it. I mean, hopefully you'll
always
get
be
a
a little
response quicker than not.
Who was the gentleman that lives in Syracuse that retired in the last few years?
Bob Summers retired,
Yeah.
but Jeff Kehoe is the guy that replaced him. Sort of, no, nobody can replace.
well,
Bob.
so we're talking about two different things, like this committee isn't talking about sending the draft zoning directly to Ag and Markets. We are talking about making a recommendation that the town board do so. Which the town board can go along with or could ignore, or they could send it to Ag and Markets and Ag and Markets could say, George already reviewed it.
Well,
There's nothing
typically
for us
the
to do."
town doesn't ignore the ag committee and the town wants to save on attorney costs. So they just do it as a matter of. course.
Sure.
And it sounds like they did a good job with that in the past. Right? You
Well-
already said it there, that was a good thing, that's great.
So I think it will be helpful to see the letter, to understand the nature of their feedback. Certainly a general recommendation is fine, but I think it'd be good to,
Just a
So
little,
would it be prudent to see this letter from Ag Markets during the coming month?
Yeah.
And then come back next month?
Yeah.
We would not be too late in the process for a recommendation,
right,
if that's what the group wanted to do.
And if somebody wanted to send something to them that they've already looked at once, you might be able to just, in your second send, highlight
The things that have
things that are
changed.
different.
understood.
anecdotal tidbit from the experience. Ulysses got so way far down the road, past everything, and then started enforcing illegal things on a lady who had sheep. And, we actually had to have Ag and Markets on the speakerphone to.
Oh, I was there that
lawsuit
night. That was great.
for the town, because that's just this expense. And we were able to resolve it and mediate it through that process.
Well, Bob Summers laid the law down.
Yes, you don't wanna have it get to that point.
So what would your recommendation be then, Greg?
I make a motion that the Ag Committee recommend
Okay,
to the town board that they seek on the final
right.
copy of the zoning law, Ag Markets opinion.
Okay. All in favor?
So this is the final copy. Not the current draft.
I think we should do final, because why waste resources?
Sure. Anyone opposed? Okay. I will try to capture that in the notes. And that doesn't, making that motion, making that recommendation to the town board doesn't change that it's also helpful for us to review the NISDAM letter and what they've already
Correct.
said about the,
Absolutely right.
And also review the final zoning.
yes. How are we going to communicate that recommendation though to the town board?
I think we could send a letter to this town supervisor.
We could probably formally do that.
Well, that way he can say the town Ag Committee.
I didn't know if we actually need to show up at a town meeting and communicate our recommendation, or if it's sufficient to have you hearing us say it and it's in the notes.
You could just send the resolution, or if you wanna come to a town meeting, that'd be fine too.
I'm not gonna be able to come to a town meeting in the next month. I know that, but if somebody else here,
Well, I often go, well, Cal's on town.
yes.
Yeah. Town could bring it.
Don't put all the burden on the guy that's here with us, but I think it's a good letter to send to the town board. I think any town Ag Committee should recommend, by the way, it's just, should be
Yeah,
a course
it
of
seems-
action,
Sure,
should be part of a checklist like seeker or anything else.
Right. makes sense.
And if Cal's the liaison, it would be appropriate for Cal to bring. Sorry, Cal.
Are you the board liaison?
It
Mark,
depends
what's
on
your
the
opinion?
month,
Pardon me?
it depends on the month, we have a flexible arrangement.
Well, I mean, has it, after
Officially-
Catherine resigned, did the board appoint a liaison or not?
Did we do that? I don't think so,
Okay,
but you know who we are, so.
Yeah, but officially, just like a letter should go to the town clerk, it's on file.
I'm cool with it.
Give me some popcorn.
Okay, thanks for bringing that
Yeah.
notion, Ken.
I know it's in it, but it's more than popcorn.
Shall I turn it over
Sure.
to you two?
Yeah. I have copies of the farmland protection options handout. Does anybody need a copy? I'll pass this around and you can.
Thank you. Been waiting for this, it's sitting down there like feet.
It's really good. So the purpose of this handout is to kind of bring us all up to speed about different options. The goal being to have something your ag and farmland protection plan that addresses farmland protection. Cause it's an element that the state wants in there. So we need to kind of figure out what that looks like and how it works well for the town of Caroline. So I outlined 3 different options in here. And I thought we'd just kind of walk through them. I'll explain what's in here and you can ask me questions for each option and then we'll kind of go from there. So option 1, there's a grant called Farmland Protection Implementation Grant that's very similar to the grant that you have for doing this plan. But it's the implementation portion and it's intended to be used to pay landowners to protect their land with a conservation easement. And it's called purchase of development rights that happens with that. Okay, so PDR, you've probably heard of that phrase before.
That's been around a while. hasn't it?
That's been around for a long time, yeah. So this grant comes out usually it does come out every 2 years. The way it's structured right now is that, so it will come out again in 2025 in the spring. And you apply and the funds are dispersed until they're gone by region. So we're in the southern tier region for this grant. And the last time I checked, which was a month ago, but I don't think it's changed, none of the funds for our region have been dispersed for this round of grants.
How big is Kitty?
It's quite large, but I don't remember what it goes for
Some
in the,
want to play that, are you saying that the funds from this round go forward or they're still available?
they're still available. It's just that nobody is going after it right now. So just to say that the funds are out there, they are available. The reason why nobody's going after them is it's a pretty difficult path to walk through. Like it's a very complicated process. It takes a long time and somebody has to hold that easement and commit to monitoring it. And in our region, it's been really tricky to find the person who's willing to apply for the grants and hold the easement and monitor it. Because it has to either be a nonprofit land trust or a county government or a town government. Or soil and water, but soil and water doesn't ever touch it. Yeah.
And also I found that the strings are quite,
Yeah, it's very complicated. The
Yeah.
whole process is very complicated and it takes a long time to get the funds.
Just to comment on what, it's a complicated, arduous process,
Yes.
but it doesn't have to have strings attached.
but it
What
does.
happens is people start throwing strings in and make all the work prior to those strings for naught because the farmer just says, the hell with it.
What do you mean, Greg? I don't quite follow you.
Well, if you go through this whole process and you get, in my opinion, you need 100% unanimous town board approval. You need to have your documents submitted in a timely fashion. You need to have your surveys, your soil maps.
No, you in this case is the farmer who's applying, well, the landowner who's
Well, I
applying.
really do believe that the farmer does most of the work, at least I do.
No, it really ends up being a land trust helping you.
Yeah,
So
so
in the case of like all the parcels that have been, that have PDR in the county, it was, either extension or the county that did all the work. The farmer just provides the information and we've gone through that.
My experience was I did 25% or more of the work. And I had to beg them to vote on it, to put their vote in on time.
Yeah.
And I promise you I did 95% of the
Okay.
work, 'cause
Well,
I can pull up
you
the
kind of have
documents.
to have the, maybe, well, I don't,
I
you have to
think,
go through. the
yeah, I mean, I
application
think it's
process.
important to note the key thing that has changed. So in the past, it's been done either by the Finger Lakes Land Trust,
No,
not in Tompkins County, but in other places around here. Or it was done by Tompkins County and Cooperative Extension, right? And that's not really an option anymore because the county's not willing to hold the easements. But the new and interesting thing that is an option is the New York State Ag Land Trust, or the New York Ag Land Trust, which has been working in the central part of the state, has not done anything in Tompkins County, but they are ready to work with us in Tompkins County. So now we have,
Entity is that?
they're a land trust. It's like the Finger
It's a
Lakes Land
private,
Trust.
it's a private,
but it's-
nonprofit.
Right, they're focused on agriculture.
So question. So where they've been active, have there been, then PDRs have been created?
Yes.
Or, so that's really, is that the main reason why we haven't had them in the southern tier? Is we don't have an active partner to,
Yes, that's absolutely the reason.
okay,
There has not been an active partner. Because we have, I hear, I mean, I've only been at Cooperative Extension for 7 or 8 months. And I've already heard from 3 separate landowners who have said, I've heard 4 separate landowners, I really would like to do this program. And there hasn't been a way to do it. And now this feels like there is a way to do it.
So the
But it's
town can
limited.
designate somebody, the county can designate somebody, or it could be a nonprofit.
It's, yeah. The applicant is either the county, the town, or the land trust.
I mean, somebody has to pay the farmer and then in turn hold some paper that basically that paper are the development rights. Somebody bought the
Right.
development rights. Now, what's the role of the town government in that? Is it optional? I mean, could the town government actually be the one that buys it? Is there an approval process? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, so the town could either apply for the state funding to pay for the development rights, or you could, like the town of Ithaca has a separate pot of money that they use to do conservation easements, purchase. of
And then in that case, the town would hold that portion of the deed.
Right, or like the town of Danby, which accepts donated easements.
So let me ask you this, let's just say that that occurred here. And then 25 or 30 years from now, times change, the town is in dire straits. The town is holding these assets that the intention was they would hold them in perpetuity, but they actually have value.
Right.
Can it
So
be undone is your question?
Pardon me?
Can it be undone? is your
Yeah, I
question.
mean, could the town cash those in, say, in 2050 if it really needed the money?
The town ends up owning the deed though, isn't it that the state has it and the town takes the responsibility to
Well,
make sure that the contract is enforced? That after you sold those development rights, you don't develop.
so then who owns the development rights then?
Well, it's not who owns it, who enforces it.
Well, wait a minute, but somebody has to own it.
Okay, so here's how it works. You fill out all the application process, put together your narrative.
Yeah,
If you have an appraisal, you can submit that as well. You try to get a resolution from your town board unanimously. So that, you know, here's the unanimous pile and here's the not unanimous pile, okay? And then, once you do that, then they go through their process of evaluating the ones that were in the good pile.
now they is whom now?
The state Department of Ag and
We
Markets.
can't be using pronouns, there are too many players.
The State Department of Ag and Markets,
Okay,
okay?
so
And-
then,
And
okay.
then
so-
they have awardees. At that time, the farmer hasn't committed himself yet
Right, yeah,
because
time, yeah.
most of the time the appraisals aren't done yet. And when they get the appraisal, they start having chickens. Because they're done from somebody who does commercial real estate in Rochester usually. And they're,
Everybody thinks there's a better deal around the corner.
So-
Yes.
But what if it is?
so the development rights are gone because the deed that the farmer now holds allows them to use it for agriculture and or conservation.
So who owns those development rights?
Nobody, because they're
They
no
can't just
longer
disappear.
They
they're
are,
disappeared.
they extinguish so you have the conservation easement in your deed is in perpetuity. That's what happens as a result of it. So when they're purchased, they are extinguished. They no longer.
But there is the question about enforcement.
Yeah, right,
Which
no, I
is
get
done with
that,
them.
all right.
So the town at that time would be the enforcement vehicle for the deed. And I think they're given a little portion of the award to do that, is that right?
I don't believe it. They do.
I can't
No, I
remember.
think
I'll
if
drop
the
this.
land
I'm
trust is
skeptical.
part of
Yeah,
it, the land trust
I'll check
would
it.
be doing that enforcement regulation.
Yeah.
It depends on who is the applicant. It can be the town, but usually it's not because of the enforcement piece.
Cause you have to go you're supposed to go every year.
Every year you need to do it and it's,
So the enforcement piece, in my opinion, should be it's conservation or ag, it shouldn't be, you can't hay your land until July 15th, and you can't cut these trees down, and you can't.
It's just
Right.
about.
So when you get the third party nonprofits involved, they
Yeah.
start putting hooks and strings in, and then the whole thing falls apart.
Right,
Well,
and I mean, it really just
And it does
depends.
fall apart.
I
Yeah,
think I see what you're saying.
it depends on
Yeah.
who you're working with as the land trust. And New York Ag Land Trust is all about ag. They are not about the conservation of the bird population or whatever it
How
is.
many
So
pigs have they done?
I don't know their total off the top of my head. I know this year they applied just for 4 grants,
And do they?
but they are anticipating to add another full-time staff person.
So it's just, the only hooks on there is conservation or ag, there's no other hooks about trees or water or anything like that.
I would be surprised if there are, but I can't speak for the details. They're specifically about agriculture, and that makes them pretty different than, like, say, the Finger Lakes Land Trust. And New York Ag and Markets, if a land trust starts inserting those things, then the portion of funding that comes from the land trust goes down, and also the scoring is also lower. They're less likely to get the funding.
So essentially, Finger Lakes Land Trust would be a bad partner.
I think Finger Lakes Land Trust would be a good partner for the right property owner, right? I mean, that's all part of the
Can I ask a
negotiation.
question about
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
So Lois Lounsbury did a farm land conservation easement, right? On her property, and that involved the land trust, right? You know about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just thought I would bring that up as an example and
Right, yeah, so I mean, the Finger Lakes Land Trust, if it meets their criteria, they're a great partner. They're located here, and it's a great resource, right? They're really big. They can put money into making things happen.
Would they want to partner with somebody that harvests timber to pay their taxes?
Right, I mean, what they're looking for is pretty specific, right? They have specific target areas, and they're interested in water quality protection,
Right.
lakeshore, creeks, like, they have their things, and it's not always a match for ag. And
Right.
that's always been the problem, is we send them from cooperative extension, we send them a property owner and say, hey, this one looks really good, what do you think? And it's always been no, because it doesn't quite meet
not
their
good enough.
criteria. So that's why we started looking at who else is out there? Who could we talk to? Who could we get on board with this? And I think New York Ag Land Trust is a great one.
So why does the county, like the Farm Protection County Board or whatever it's called, why aren't they applying the appropriate pressures on Tompkins County, that whole planning department, to do it right? And not just say we won't do it, that's.
Right,
there's
well,
They got one of the biggest planning departments in the state.
right. And I think their answer to that is that they are planners.
Yeah.
And as soon as they start putting staff towards things that are on the ground implementation, they're no longer doing their planning work.
So local government is best, I feel.
But
Local oversight is best.
but
If you can drive up 5 minutes and look around and say, geez, Greg's just using this as pasture, great job, see you later. But if it's, you can only cut 18.6% of timber per year, and you can only do that once every 10 years, and then it's just a mess, because you gotta get people out there with rulers in the planning department. I don't know if they own cow boots or not, but you know what I'm saying, they're
Right.
nice tie dressed, well-dressed people.
Yeah, I get the 2 things I would say is, one, the county is talking about doing some things like redirecting some of their conservation funds to help with farmland protection. That would be great. That would be a great role for them. The other thing is, there's nothing to say that the town can't also apply. I think it's really great to have different options, because for some landowners, they're really gonna only feel comfortable working with somebody that's right here. Other people are gonna want the land trust, that's the Finger Lakes Land Trust or that New York Ag Land Trust. There's nothing to say that you can't have.
I've sold land to the Finger Lakes interest, I didn't mean to disparage them, I just, their interests and my
Right.
interests differ
Right.
so much.
Right,
That I want a conservation easement to do ag, I don't want strings and people out with rulers and satellite maps and stuff, cause I had to put a fence line down there, it's called silvo pasture, have you ever, what's silvo pasture? You
Right,
know?
right. Yeah,
I
But
think
if-
that's
if
the
the
point
town-
you're trying to make is that the New York Ag Land Trust is not inclined to put all those strings
right.
on it. So that's,
That's a
But we have a
really
different-
refreshing thing that wasn't
there's a
around.
different
in the administrative
Exactly.
process.
Yeah, I think it's really
Thank you,
exciting.
by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be adversarial. I'm
Oh,
just
not
trying
at
to-
all. No, it's
I want to
great.
relay an experience so that people maybe could help me
Mhm.
or the town or other farmers not have that same experience.
Yeah.
So
I know you don't want to be adversarial, but Crystal used to work for the planning department.
It was a
So
long
good
time
luck.
ago.
Well, I didn't say I didn't like them. I just, I don't think pushing it onto a nonprofit is the answer when they have such a well-staffed department. They really do.
They do, they do.
But it's
yeah.
still, I mean,
And there are a lot of smart people there that could throw on a pair of rubber boots and say, geez, he's only using it for pasture. That's great, check.
Right,
You know.
but, and they really take their monitoring the easements very seriously because they had staff that, you know, Scott would go out every year to every farm that
Scott,
they held the
yes.
easements. And he would walk the property. and-
He did.
Did they ever have to contest it?
No, I
See,
mean,
that's where
it
you
was-
really get into problems, is somewhere down the road. There's gonna be something that has to be
Yeah.
contested. Who was gonna pay the lawyer's fees?
The
Who
trouble
was
is,
going to take it to
you go
court?
through all this process and paperwork and votes and resolutions and stuff. Then you get awarded it, and then the hardest part starts after you get the award's contingent on you landing a town, county, or nonprofit to do it, and hooks and strings start happening, and it rubs you wrong when you get all the way through this.
it's a complicated thing for sure.
Yeah.
But there have been situations, for example, with Hausers even, where, you know, in the easement, this is an easement with the county. He's allowed to develop 3 farmsteads out of his 400 acres, you know, and he had some logical places where there were buildings. And so in that process, if that comes up, you then have to go back and work with an attorney. That's where the costs come in, you know, to start developing that. It's because you're subdividing off some land. So, you know, there are complications and costs that arise in order to, you know, even fulfill, like you have an easement and even to fulfill.
So either Crystal or Monica, is each contract kind of a unique piece of work drawn up by an attorney?
Well,
So
the
that if I did
easements,
it and Greg did it, we would have separate contracts because
Yeah.
our needs or desires.
oh
are
yeah,
different.
and they evaluate each parcel in terms of, okay, well, it makes sense that possibly you can have, you know, if in the future the owner wants to subdivide, you know, how many farmsteads does it make sense to subdivide?
Does it permit?
Yeah,
And
and
other-
it's based on the land. It's, you know, like if you only have a 30-acre parcel, you're not gonna probably subdivide that.
I'm always looking for trouble. I am a skeptic and I do take Nancy's point about down the line, there's gonna be trouble, but I suppose with these individual contracts, they can be worded in such a way. that they don't-
Well, and also it may be that down the road, 30 years from now or something, there's trouble and there's not a budget to enforce it, but like. But at least it was protected for those 30 years and the
Well,
farmer
but then
got some
somebody's out
cash.
for money though. I mean, who's ever putting up this money and probably.
state.
Yes, but if it's the
taxpayer.
state, yeah,
Well, but it's a taxpayer.
Sure.
It's each of us to a marginal degree. I would also think that would be an encumbrance on the deed filed with the clerk. So that if somebody tries to kind of say, gee, let me sell a couple acres here, maybe nobody noticed. The buyer doing the title search would say, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, that would come up.
yes.
And I think it's really important to communicate to the farmers that your balance sheets just changed. You are worth less
Yeah, you've got less assets.
once you sign that. And that means you can't borrow money for equipment, soil, or buy more land. And that puts us at odds, farmers with the land trust sometimes, because you wanna protect the land, you want open views. That's me. Guess what? the
Yeah,
land
but
is?
the farmer
Yeah.
just got a chunk of cash though for selling the development right. So it's not like it's taking, I mean, it is reducing the value of your land long term, so it is changing your balance sheet, but you also just got a chunk of money
Yeah,
to
that
put.
goes right up to Empire Tract.
Well, but there's the new equipment that you didn't have to borrow money for because you had cash.
How long
in hand.
does, you know,
Not necessarily. What you're saying, that may be true with the person that owes 200,000 and gets 500,000. But what about the guy that owes 1 million and only gets 500,000? He's 500,000 still in the hole.
Well,
I
then
ju- I
you
just think
decide
it's
not
very
to.
important.
That, yeah, so then that person wouldn't
You
choose
don't,
to do
you
it. then.
don't,
It's just gotta be part of the farmer's thinking in whether this is the right move
it's
for them.
still a voluntary program.
Yeah,
I realize it's voluntary but if they take that hoping to,
Too bad there wasn't a
something.
purchase of development rights. Just like, you know, social security has inflation increases, but it should have that too, really, yes.
or a program like with the conservation reserve that,
Who rents or buys something forever and doesn't get an increase for their whatever,
right.
you know?
In other words, like similar to this PDR, but they take the rights, but are for 20 years.
Term, yeah,
Now, either negotiate again, or it's out of the program. Or another scenario would be, okay, you're doing this for 20 years and some of this other program I know sort of alludes to that. That it's sort of a rental agreement.
Mhm.
So
Are you-
it's,
are you talking about lease of development rights?
Because
that was
might
some-
be, I guess if that's renting, sure.
That was something that Andrew brought up and was very interested in
Right.
early on.
yeah. That's something I should still put in here.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there other interest in that
I didn't mean to
idea?
come off negative, I hope.
Oh, you're fine.
I really didn't, I'm a very.
No,
positive
it's,
person.
it's very, it's helpful,
I
Greg,
really
to have
deeply care
perspective.
about everybody in the room, and I also care about farmers and their families.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there's a side of it, I always felt maybe it was a little unfair that they wouldn't purchase the development rights on a farm down in some far off county, part of the town, but if it's a farm on Longsbury Road, they'll do a purchase of development rights, but they wouldn't do one on top of Buffalo Hill next to Long John.
Well, it didn't, the thing is probably the development rights.
Development
enforcement
pressure.
There
Yeah,
is the
but you know,
thing.
but there's still that, you
Yeah.
know, that.
But that's,
Here's a head.
That
scratcher
isn't
for you.
Unless my understanding of it's wrong, but I always just
I mean-
felt that there was this sort of
Lois ended up not with the PDR program. She ended up with the conservation,
easement.
and it has to do with the watershed.
Yeah, that was part, but still,
So it
you
was
know
a
what I mean,
different program.
there's the, I think
Is
they
that a
looked at,
rental type agreement, or is it one payment?
that was one payment.
And it's in perpetuity. So, but there's you have the federal conservation reserve program, people can go to
CRP,
for, short term.
Well, yes, and that's like a lease or a rental
Yeah,
for so long.
yeah.
What
That
I'm saying
exists.
is a similar type program for development rights. Justin,
Yeah,
But I gotta look at this New York Ag process, is that what it's called?
New York Ag Land
I
Trust.
don't know. Thank you for
Yeah.
that information.
Yeah,
and is one of the first things that are on this eligibility list. I know you only did PDR things. Is that, it's got to be prime farmland. Or, soils are statewide important. So.
it needs to have some, yeah. Yeah, it does.
And
And if
for
it
this
doesn't have any,
program.
then
I mean, for the purposes of this ag plan, it seems to me what we want, what I'm hearing from you guys is a clearly defined process by which farmers could sell development rights for cash. And, the process might be that, your recommendations are that as this New York State Ag Land Trust Program kind of evolves, that we tie into that, that You know, there's a process for helping identify who's interested, keeping those people informed when the opportunity exists to, you know, I mean, there's a rolling application to some extent, you know, they announce it and then I don't know if there's a hard deadline.
Well,
anymore.
there's definitely a hard deadline for working with the New York Ag Land Trust.
Oh.
Their pre-application process starts about 8 to 10 months before. And it goes through the county ag and farmland protection board for their ranking. And then to the land trust board for their ranking.
So
That, yeah,
How many were submitted in the recent,
4.
to the
There,
county?
but, no, 4 applications were submitted by the New York Ag Land Trust, but
For
they're
state funding.
anticipating. They currently have 1 staff member, they're anticipating going up to 2 staff members, so that would go up.
That's 4 inside our county,
No,
No,
No.
none in our county.
oh, the whole
They have,
southern tier region.
no,
that was for central, that was, I think, within 2 counties that they're, maybe 3 I think 2 counties. And then they're looking at expanding into our county.
Just it is my understanding it doesn't have to be one deeded parcel, it could be many deeded parcels.
Right, correct,
And they don't have to be contiguous.
correct, I think that is true.
Can be a portion of the deed of property.
So on ag land that's not, read this again here, prime farmland or soils of statewide importance. Why should those farmers that have land that way, and they may have some good land, but over here, no. Why should they be restricted to
Prime farmlands are restricted.
how much they can sell? And I guess that's coming from potential zoning thing, says on your land, you have to have the average in development of 3 acres. If you can't sell any development rights off of that land, why should they be restricted?
I feel like that's probably outside of the topic, just because this is not about zoning as a farmland protection or farmland.
Well, the question
Like
is,
restrictions piece.
is on that land then, there are no development rights. I can't apply for any to sell them to you.
Right, I think, I mean, for this grant program, it's true, it really only works if you do have at least some prime or soil of statewide importance land.
That's how it is.
That's how it's set up, there's nothing else, nothing to do about it, except for to acknowledge that that's only a piece of the farmland protection that you might want to do,
But-
right?
but
And
in
it's a
addition, it
phrase
also-
they take into account the zoning as part of the value of the land.
Well, see, in addition that they aren't gonna wanna protect bad land, because the whole idea is to protect ag land. That's productive, and that's why they wanna focus on the good land, but the other part of that is that. They're purchasing development rights, and if you have something that can't be developed. They're not gonna buy that either.
So let's just pretend you were in a lakeshore conservation
Yes.
zoning area and you could only put 1 house per parcel ever. What do you think the purchase of development rights would be for that
Well, it
land?
depends on how valuable that one parcel could be.
It's
If you can
like-
put a Mar-a-Lago on it. You know, the
I
development.
don't think
rights are
anything's
nothing.
going for more than 20,000 an acre here, with
Well,
just
There
land,
is.
just land, just land,
Yep,
no
Yeah.
buildings. Really, 20,000 an acre?
well.
I'm in the wrong business.
About 35 to 40.
Where's
Like a
that?
single lot, Gary, I mean, you know, a single lot could go for more than 20.
Oh, my God.
I don't know that you're gonna sell 100 acres for $2 million, but.
But I guess part of what I'm getting at as a farmer, if I have not prime land. And I get restricted, I'm not saving, on that less than prime land, I'm still raising crops and I'm. Yeah, making some money maybe. But how do I want to say then? By selling. I think a reasonable sale of a lot is 1.3 acres or something like that. So to stay alive, I sell the 1.3 acres instead of having to sell 3. Because I could still use them other less than 2 acres
To generate
to
revenue.
generate revenue. And so, but in the meantime, by doing that, I've saved the good stuff. I've saved that for you. It's.
I don't understand the question. And so you're subdividing a parcel,
Yeah,
and then what?
He sells off the bad farmland.
I've taken the $20,000, whatever it is, and put that into my good land. I'm still raising crops on the other, but if I feel discriminated against if I made to sell more, have to sell more of
Because,
the poor land. Well, I know it's not in your zoning thing, but I'm reading that saying you have to have an average of 3 acres per lot. That's the way I get it, but I may be reading it wrong, and it may have changed, I don't know yet.
Oh, I think you're saying that the zoning, the changes they're talking about having would force you to be less of a good conservator of ag land. Because when you wanted to get cash, you would have to sell some of your better land
No.
to make up that.
But I
3
think
think
we're
that-
getting into the weeds on zoning here, and it's not related to the farmland protection programs that Crystal's talking about.
Yeah, I think the thing that we wanna get through tonight is thinking about the options and then thinking about what you wanna put into the plan to help implement those options. So for example, if you're like, yes, this seems like a viable option that we wanna encourage
Purchase of development.
this to happen, then you would want that in your ag and farm protection plan, because that's one of the things that's gonna be looked at for this grant. So in order, so when you do this grant, you need to reference both the county's ag and farmland protection plan and the town's ag and farmland protection plan, and it needs to be supported by both of those. So you would want to say in there that farmers should be able to use this tool.
Oh, just
So-
a sentence even.
And then you might even go farther to say, these are the things that we think are most important. So maybe in the town, you think the most important thing is protecting, I don't know what it is, like you would identify, like it's this area or it's over there. Or we think it's really important to support farmers as they're retiring and the new generation of farmers coming in. That's one of the things that we think is important. So you want to kind of think through like what you think should be done, because that is what's going to be put into the grant application. You're providing the support for that grant application.
And, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it was just a question about that specific point, because it's on there, right, about be consistent with the location of land or areas proposed be protected in the county or the municipalities, and both in farmland protection plan. And I know Tompkins County has that 6 Mile Creek area. Is that something that if we wanted to go with this option one, we were like, this is one of the things we want to make sure we're supporting in the plan is farmers being able to use the FPIC program. Would we need to designate specific areas? Because I think that gets at some of Cal's concern there also about what if I'm a farmer outside of that area, you know, and then losing out on that protection? Or would we be able to just do non-geographic priorities that would still be cited in the grants? Even if we don't sit down and say as the town of Caroline, these are the, you know, strip of land that we're gonna say we wanna focus on protecting. Instead, we throw out a larger, you know, quality thing instead of geographic of we wanna, you know, protect special emphasis on food production that goes to people that live in the town, or special emphasis
Right.
on food production or increasing the number of farmers in the town or something
Right.
like that.
Or supporting
than-
retiring farmers
Yeah,
so that their land doesn't
Rather
go out
than
of production. Yeah.
specific geographic
Right.
location.
I would support
Yes.
that as opposed to trying to say we want these certain geographic areas to
I
be,
don't like the
protected.
idea of
yeah, because it would,
said, I don't think.
how would you go about deciding that?
Has any less right to be protected than anybody else's.
Yeah, and I don't know many towns that have put in really specific, parcel lists or anything. I think most towns, when they develop their ag plan, do have general areas and criteria.
One-
What is ARPA then?
So ARPA is something that the Tompkins County has in their conservation plan. And it's the ag resource focus areas, and in the town of Caroline, you have one, it's the 6 Mile Creek Valley, which is this area here.
So it's a specific area.
It's a specific
Yeah, but
area,
but what we're
But-
saying is that that's in the county's plan, like that doesn't have to be in our recommendations.
right?
But in order to do the application process, Crystal just said you have to be coinciding with the town and the county.
Yeah, I think that's the reality, is that that also plays a part, right? But you don't have to necessarily also say that. You might have
Right.
some other things that you think are important.
And that's for now, and I think that also the viewers can look and see that the county has that because it's a water supply.
Yeah.
And what you might be, and you could convince them to not put so much emphasis on that because ag land, actually protecting the water supply is not exactly necessarily where you want to protect the ag
Right.
land.
I will
necessarily.
say that my recollection is that that's not about water supply. It's called 6 Mile Creek Valley, but it's because the good soils are right here.
Oh,
Right.
Soil
yeah.
quality.
It's primarily soil quality active agriculture.
As a person that grazes, I kind of
You
get
graze?
tired,
Oh,
I get tired of hearing soils of importance and
Right,
soil
because it
quality.
doesn't matter that much when you, yeah,
I'm not planting corn, people.
yeah,
Right.
I'm not dairy.
sure. So I was just thinking though, just to back up for a second about like, and first of all, it's true that we have to have farmland protection strategies in the plan that's required as part of this plan. But in the big picture, as far as what we as a group choose to put in this plan, we've talked a lot about like supporting new farmers, helping new operations get established in the town. We've talked a little bit about marketing and like direct marketing type things. And I just want to make sure that we are thinking about, we have such a huge diversity of people who are managing land and having some kind of agricultural activity on that land in this town. And I want to make sure that there's like something in the plan for everyone.
I
And
agree with you.
so-
These tools are just different tools. And they
Yes.
apply to different farms, geography, operations, water, soils, etc. So why wouldn't you say they're all in, and this is your toolbox?
Yeah,
And as a town, we've dedicated our planner or our building code person to monitor your easement.
yeah, when I hear ag and farmland protection, I'd like to know that timber or hardwood lot was included. Or not excluded.
Hmm.
I don't know if it needs to be mentioned specifically, but when I hear ag and farmland, I tend to think of open space that's been growing field crops or something.
Right.
Timber's a big harvest, both with, not like Christmas trees, but pulp and
Yeah,
Lumber,
Sugar and.
lumber.
maple syrup.
Yeah,
Syrup.
all of that.
Any agroforestry.
Yeah.
Agroforestry stuff.
So I think we should move on because we're kind of running out of time and I want to make sure that we kind of get to some key pieces here. So we've talked about PDR. I want to briefly mention PPR, which is like, I feel like it's very confusing that it has a very similar acronym, but it's preemptive purchase rights. It's used in partnership with PDR. It provides additional funding to the landowner in exchange for additional restrictions. And this one came about in New York State. It was brought by the Young Farmers Coalition because they felt like PDR was not addressing affordability. That even though we all talk about like, oh, we lose value in our land, actually in places like Tompkins County, that's not really what's happening because there's such a demand for the the open space value of it, of somebody just buying that land because it's beautiful, that it really still has there's a lot of competition where farmers can't afford that land still, even if it has a conservation easement. So PPR provides additional funding. It's through the same grant program. And then the restriction on it is that it can only be sold to another farmer or to a family member of the current landowner. And it has to be sold at ag value. So that's in perpetuity. It's not required, like a landowner could decide to just do PDR.
Ag value according to the soil group's worksheet as established by New York State.
No, it's, my understanding is there's kind of a very small handful of real estate appraisers that
Okay,
do
so-
this work.
So it would be private appraisal, not.
Yeah, private
Not
appraisal.
the soil, that's not the number that's used by New York State on the soil work.
No,
For the
right.
farmers.
Right, exactly.
Comment?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
this smacks of central planning in the sense that you've got a very small cadre of experts setting market value. Opposed to letting the marketplace set market value, and I guess the PPR has kind of triggered that nervousness on my part.
Unfortunately, all these programs, I think, require an appraisal, and there's a very small select few people.
Yeah, no, you're right, Greg, it's just that this kind of
Yeah,
bubbled it up to the surface of my brain, I wanted to comment.
I hate to do this again, but the 12 acres I sold to the Finger Lakes Land Trust was gonna be purchased by the state, so they had to have the state certified appraisal. So I said, well, talk to the appraiser, 1,200, 1,300 feet of 89 frontage overlooking Cute Lake. What is 400 feet of a, county road? What is 12 acres worth when your next door neighbor just put in $1.9 million worth of improvements?
Mhm.
Oh, it's worth 95,000.
Hmm?
There's $200,000 worth of timber here. What are you talking about? Let alone the lot.
Yeah, it's not a perfect tool, but I think it is an interesting tool when it's applied in a situation where, say, you have a landowner who's retiring from farming. They would like to be able to cash out. They don't have a family member who wants to take over. That's the place, the moment in time when you can enter with these grant funds, provide that retiring farmer with cash and get a new young generation farmer in there at an affordable price.
So Crystal, my
Yeah.
question is, why wouldn't this farmer who's looking to cash out just sell it? Sell it on the
Well,
marketplace.
because they don't want to.
Because they don't wanna see it turned into,
They wanna keep.
they don't wanna see it turned into 15 little houses or
Yeah, it's
whatever.
just an option.
Okay, so then he would have to take less to satisfy his predilections, okay?
Well, so, right, the idea is that
Just to make up the
you,
difference.
it makes up the difference. You sell it to the new generation farmer for an affordable price. That's this, the value's worth this on the open market developed. Right?
And they can
And it-
keep their home and they can live out the remainder of their days. You can make it that way.
Right, you can definitely make it.
Yeah, there's still a few things in this equation I don't get, but I'll do research later.
Yeah, so again, the thing we're trying to do tonight is learn about the options and then think about what we put in the plan, that if you want a farmer to be able to do this, that the plan supports that grant application, because that's how it's gonna happen.
What would that look like with PPR specifically? What would go into the plan if that was something that the town was like, we wanna make sure this is supported?
Well, yeah, so then I think it comes down to what your goals are that you're listing, or the priorities for protection, right? That you might say that affordable,
You'll be in the farmer now.
no, the.
Being our ag committee.
Darn.
The committee.
I know, sorry.
In your ag plan, that you might, if you were interested in that issue, if you were like affordability and retiring farmers, that's a really key issue in the town of Caroline. That's something that we wanna work towards using these grant funds.
You have to define farming.
Oh, no.
No,
We go back.
Well,
So-
in that one program, it
Yeah.
says greater than 50% of your income is derived from farming.
that's so I will say, it's an example, it can be written up however it is, and usually what happens in these ones on the ground is the landowner finds a farmer. And the land trust says, great, that can be your farmer, right? And the requirements in terms of the 50% comes in if the land trust needs to step into the situation and be more specific. But it's usually quite flexible. It's usually the land trust just needs, if it doesn't meet that criteria, then the land trust needs to say, yes, that's okay. But usually they would, right? It's,
Yeah, I go again, I know I'm going a lot. So from the point of view of this committee, I would recommend that we recommend something simple. Because this is starting to sound like circles within circles, you know, how the Greeks tried to accommodate all the planets orbiting the Earth.
Well,
And they, all these little epicircles and circles within circles.
we all have different interests and.
Well, okay, so
our
I don't think we
situation-
can address every interest.
No, but what we can do as an ag committee, I think we might all agree on this one thing. That we, I'm gonna make a motion that this ag committee recommend to the town board and the supervisor. That
I'm on the board.
that they appoint the building and or planning person as the one to monitor all these tools.
I'm not sure I'm even ready to accept that, so.
Well, I made a motion.
Okay,
Does anyone want to second that motion?
Can I ask a question about?
Sure.
So you're moving that we recommend to the town board that they like
Well,
have all of this stuff available to support people and that they have a staff person who helps.
I'll second that motion so that we can discuss it.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you for the
Thank
point of,
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that the additional duties assigned or the planner or building code enforcement person monitor the easement, period, end of discussion. The rest of these tools can be worked on with the ag committee or the farmer and the trust or the nonprofits or the county, etc. But just allocate a very small piece of that person's time, because it's really not that much time. To monitor the terms of the easement. And when you get that buy-in from your town to say, we're willing to accept the responsibility to monitor the easement. Then your application is greased almost. It works because we have a local entity, government entity, monitoring local people, local government. And that's really the best thing because I can't drive to Albany to talk to the person who's monitoring the land, or I can't get hold, the person that monitors this year with Finger Lakes isn't the same as last, but we're voters. We can vote people in and out if we're not liking the way they're doing things, so.
And I'd say if I was on that New York State committee, looking to see who gets the state money. I might wonder about the ability of the town of Caroline to do a good job. I'm not saying that it would, but then I could take your application that's been greased and kind of put it down there.
Well, no, when I say greased, it means our application is supported locally at the town level where people are gonna have eyes on the scene more than somebody from a far
Right,
place.
but where it's as the state person evaluating it, I'll be going.
It works both ways, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, the land trust has experience doing this, they know what they're doing.
yeah, that's
But they
that's
also
what I was
say-
wondering.
They also might say, well, we have to pay for the appraisal, and if the land trust gets sticky with the farmer, then we're gonna throw the money that we paid for the appraisal out the window, because it's not paid by the farmer, it's paid by the state.
right, I will say that I think that it's. The person the entity who holds the easement is the entity that is responsible for monitoring the easement.
And that's what he's talking about. He
So
wants
you're
the
saying the
town of
town would
Caroline.
hold the easement.
Yeah, that's gonna be a
So
better situation.
The other thing I will say is that I have heard directly from Jeff Kehoe that he does not personally think that towns have the capacity to do that.
especially small towns like this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that that's accurate. I think you could have the capacity if you chose to. But I will say that the opinion of Ag and Markets, who is looking at and evaluating the easements, is that the land trusts are really the entity that should do it.
I also think
That
that
just
Greg's
smells bad.
motion is premature. Because we haven't even made a recommendation as to what course we want to recommend. I mean, there are three options here. We've been spending the whole night talking about one of them.
And
So
I will say
I would
too,
vote against Greg's thing on the basis that it is completely premature and not really relevant at this time. And also, I tend to agree with Jeff Kehoe based on what you said.
I will also say that option 2 and 3, I think are more appropriate for town level implementation. So if you felt like it's really important to have an option that's being done at the town level, 2 and 3 would be probably more successful than number 1, just because of the grant criteria.
But there's nothing wrong with including the tools in our ag.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. And I think it would be, appropriate to say, if you wanted to have staff time available to work on these things and you wanted to have a recommendation about that, that would be a great thing to include in your plan.
What do you think, Al? You're a farmer, you're on the town board and you're on this committee.
He's a liaison.
Pardon me?
We're flies on the wall.
I think we just need to keep working through this and kind of try to get an idea of what our options are. I
See-
agree with you. I think I'm sympathetic with Greg's motion, but I think it's premature right now.
Would it be helpful for us to talk about option 2 and 3 briefly?
Yes.
So we okay. So option number 2 is donation of conservation easements. So we've been talking about funding to pay the landowner for their development rights, but this would be if they wanted to donate them. And I guess this would come about if somebody wanted to protect their land, right? Having an option to do that. And also there are tax benefits that are available if you do donate your land. So it's not the same as getting paid for it outright, but there are significant tax benefits from doing it. And this is something that you could either, as a private landowner, do to, like, you could donate your easement to the Finger Lakes Land Trust, or you could do it to the town if you had it set up like that. Like the town of Danby has a conservation committee that accepts those easements. The town holds those easements and then monitors them with volunteer time.
Yeah, because there's landowners that don't quite often purchase development rights. Some communities may like to convert an asset to cash. And there's people that don't need cash but have, the land assets.
Right.
So they just and then there's tax benefits that they could reap by doing, which are significant.
They're
And
significant.
it's just, they're in a different financial situation than.
Right.
But most, I mean, a lot of farmers tend to, hasn't been, well, anyway.
Right.
There's two sides of it, at least, this coin. One is trying
So-
to capture cash or retirement income or.
Mhm.
How, can I just ask a clarifying question about
Yeah.
option number 2?
Yeah.
Donation of conservation easements. You mentioned that that's one of the options that could be for town level implementation, but
Right.
what would the town's role be? It sounds like, just from my quick reading of this, that it would be between the landowner and the, like, Finger Lakes Land Trust, for example.
Right, so you could now donate a conservation easement to the Finger Lakes Land Trust if they accept it,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
The town of Danby has set up a separate program, not through the Finger Lakes Land Trust. It's just the town of Danby,
Okay,
where you can donate your easement to the town, which then they monitor and
I
it
see.
qualifies the landowner for the tax benefits.
So
and
the
how many
town of Dan-
properties have been?
I don't know off the top of my head, but quite a lot.
How do you
Yeah.
feel about these things, then they're almost like mortgages, then they get traded off. The Finger Lakes Land Trust trades, but that's. They trade off this one for that one with some other. And before you know it, you kind of wonder who is.
So the town of Danby has enough resources to do the monitoring.
They have a volunteer committee that does all of the monitoring.
But there's no direct pay.
And there's a lot of towns around the state that are monitoring these FPIG programs, ag markets program.
I don't know that there are
You
that
mentioned it, but
many.
in this document, I think there's 3 or 4 here, right?
that are, no. There's towns that are doing the partial tax exemption for term conservation easements. That's option number 3.
But any conservation easement is also the town, they have to monitor.
Yes, absolutely.
But that's-
I don't see why it's premature to expect our town to monitor easements in the town.
Monitor what though? We don't have anything yet.
So you
There are well
could, you
established
could,
Programs and Danby's doing it and a lot of towns here are doing it.
Those, but these other ones are monitoring something where there's a tax abatement, not a
No,
cash
not
payment.
necessarily, it could be just conservation.
Well, but
But
the
isn't-
conservation easement gives you a tax abatement. That's
No.
why you do it.
It's not just for the taxes, there's either money or conservation. And by putting your land in conservation, you reduce your taxes, they're not abated.
well, so
Maybe I used the wrong.
I mean, you can get a tax credit if you donate
Right.
your easement.
A one-time tax.
No,
credit. This
every
is
year,
Every
year, up to
Okay.
$5,000.
So that's.
Plus the one
On
time,
the local or on the state tax?
that's on the New York State, but then there's the federal income tax deduction for the value of the conservation easement. That's a one time.
It's,
Yeah, so there's money in it.
but in terms of tax relief,
The New York State tax relief is a tax credit and it's up to $5,000.
Credit on the state income tax.
It's a credit on the school district, county and town real property taxes paid during the current tax year.
So why not just adjust?
And it
the
goes
assessment
each
then?
year.
I mean, wouldn't the simpler mechanism be? to
I don't
adjust
think
the
that we
assessment?
have to talk about that because we can't do anything about that piece of it really. That's.
No, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I mean, you're saying,
So I think the question before us here is whether you would want to do something at the town level. Right now, resident property owners can do something with the Finger Lakes Land Trust. That's the option that's really available. They want to permanently protect through donation of a conservation easement.
There are, 4 or 5 parcels
Yeah.
at least.
And I don't really know exactly what, the land trust can say no to it, and sometimes they do. I don't know what their criteria are for the donated easements as well as for the FPIC.
Plus, we just decide from the tax liability of farmland that it isn't being worked because somebody's older, and then it just becomes reset as rural vacant land, and then taxes jump huge. It would not, I could own a piece of land, quit working it, and but I can't, and then it becomes rural vacant land instead of farmland, taxes quadruple. But yet it's still potentially, or maybe I'm getting in the weeds on that. I can see all sorts of things if it's designated.
It's still in conservation, you still.
Yeah.
PD.
And you could, you could maybe afford the taxes, but you couldn't afford the taxes if you went to rural vacant land.
Because you'd lose your ag assessment.
Yeah.
so somebody's gonna. keep working
But
on
that's
that.
a separate question from this.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Could we hear option 3 quick?
Option 3, yep, so this is one that's been done in several towns in New York, including Danby, also a few other ones. And this is partial tax exemption for a term conservation easement. So the way that it's outlined is that you can, if you choose to have a conservation easement of 15 to 29 years, for example, you get a 50% reduction on your local taxes paid on the land, not the development. So it can be for school and county. In Tompkins County, that hasn't happened yet, but I know the town of Danby has been advocating for that. So it's a pretty small piece, but it could grow. And if you go all the way up to perpetual, so you say this is gonna be a permanent conservation easement, then you can get 90% off. Again, now just at the town level, not school or county, but that could change. And it's just for your land, not the value of your, not the,
Just for your, what?
Just the value of the land, not improvements.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the terms of the conservation easement are negotiated with the town of Danby in this case.
Yes, right. Exactly.
So can I ask a question?
Sorry, hang on just a second, Ryan, Ken was gonna say something.
Is down at the bottom is. The last three lines, it says, if a property equal to 5 times the tax saved. Okay. I'm missing a line there. Okay, violated, all right, so that's the same as if. Let's say I got 20 acres and I got an assessment on it, so my taxes are lower, but hey. Taking five acres out after 8 years and it's a different class then. And that's what that's saying it's gonna do.
Right,
So,
yeah, it's the
so
same
if
idea.
it's, if, does that stay with the land or the previous owner?
With the land, it stays, it's an easement,
So the guy
Deed
that buys
restriction.
that 5 acres
Would have to,
puts a hospital in there.
they would have to pay the penalty, yeah.
Okay.
is there a reason why we wouldn't want to include this in our town ag plan? Yeah, oh, okay. Sorry, and I forgot to come back to you, Ryan.
That was exactly what I was gonna ask, was trade-offs of, if we decide, land protection is important to us. Here are 3 options, we wanna make sure that it sounds like everybody's sort of on board for. The more options, because we have tons of diversity with
Yeah,
types of
All the
operations.
tools, yeah,
Are there trade-offs to being like, let's do all 3?
yeah, like why wouldn't we want to include all the tools?
So only complexity, so is what's on the table or what you're asking, Erica, that, we recommend that Caroline do as Danby has? I mean, I'm just trying to follow
Yeah,
what you're asking us to consider.
yeah. I mean, I think we probably all, or I should just speak for myself. I don't necessarily feel ready to like make that motion and say, this is what we should do, this is what we should include in our plan. I would want to understand a little bit more about what Danby has done. And, try to figure out some of the complexities of it,
I want
but
to see numbers. I mean, I'm a numbers jock, I said that a few times. So I would like to see it, if it's just trivial amounts of money, so
Right.
it's not make a noticeable effect on the town budget,
right,
then I could be comfortable with it. But
Yeah.
if it's non-trivial, say it could affect the town budget by, well, affect the town revenue stream, I guess is the more accurate way to put it.
Mm,
And if it were to affect, the foregone taxes,
But that's
Right.
exactly a question I had, is this about the state or the government stepping in and making up the difference to the town?
No.
Aren't most of these things,
No.
the state makes the local municipality whole? It's my understanding, like.
Option 2 and option 3
Yeah.
here especially.
The state makes the state is not involved
in options
Okay.
two,
in
There's
either
some-
2 or 3, except for that in 2, there's the New York State tax credit. That provides. a
that's as
funding
it
piece.
should be, in my view. In other words, if the local folks say we want to subsidize the farmers, then let the local folks put their money where their mouth is. No, if it's just a trivial amount of money, then it's probably not controversial. But if it's, on the order of 5 to 10% of the tax revenues are involved, then they probably wouldn't be. But I would like to see those numbers before I.
well, and tax revenue lost, and then also the amount of labor
Right.
required on the town's part for just doing the deal, holding the deed. I would assume all of it is very minor, but like you said, it's helpful to
Right,
have
it's helpful to see the
a
real
full
numbers.
understanding of the picture.
$1 billion here, $1 billion there, before you know it, you're talking real money.
Who said that? Ross Perot, wasn't it?
No, it's Harry Truman.
You're.
Oh, right, because Ross Perot said
I
billion.
thought
Yeah.
you were suggesting the toolbox, is that right? Is that what you?
Well, so I just said, what would be the reasons why we wouldn't include all the tools in our toolbox? And
I say
this
complexity.
complexity and understanding the potential financial impacts of some of these tools on a town budget, for example, is one reason. It's not a reason to not include those tools. I think we're just saying,
Those are things to think about down.
yes, we'd like to have a little bit more information before somebody goes and makes a motion to say, we want to include all of these in our ag plan.
But to clarify, option 3 is the only one that's directly affecting town tax revenue, right? Because option
Yes,
2 is state tax
yes.
credit. Option 3, no, tax revenue involved directly. Okay,
Kind of remembering though that they're already getting ag exemptions at the town and school district
Yeah.
level. And regardless of what the assessor assesses it at, you're still paying at an ag ceiling.
That's the one where the state. is.
And therefore, the town revenue wouldn't be less because you're already paying on the ag assessed property.
So I think one of the things that we haven't discussed here is this conservation easement doesn't just attach to ag land. It can be anybody's.
Right.
It can be anybody.
Yeah.
and free credit.
So
Right.
that it impacts the broader community than just
Yes,
folks holding ag. So I think I should be aware of that.
That's where it can start.
And the other thing is, if we want to continue to discuss this, I would recommend that we invite someone from the town of Danby who's doing this
yes,
now
Right.
to speak with us about, so we can ask the questions and get some idea about the impact and how successful it's been and that type of thing.
Do you know how long they've been doing this?
Partial tax exemption is brand new. I think it just started this year. Yeah.
That makes sense, but we updated our exemptions last year and we would have done this if we.
Right, the donation of conservation easements, I believe that started in 2020. Did I write that down in here? I don't think I did.
So is the
But
question?
yeah, they started
is the
it
question
already.
whether it should be an active or historically farmed property or,
That's not how conservation easements work.
well, no, these are farmland protection tools, so I'm using the scope of the farmland and your point, I'm thinking out loud. Is I think the town would wanna limit the third tool to ag land so it doesn't become a free for all. And a administrative headache and a loss of revenue.
So you're
Define
thinking,
ag land,
Everybody put their land in for perpetual.
Well, that's the reason why I asked the question, about who writes the terms of the conservation easement. If it's some land that's not in ag land and you're trying to protect watershed or avian species or whatever, you can deal with that with land that's not ag land. And if you have ag land and that's what the town is trying to preserve because of the Ag and Farmland Protection Board, then it can write different terms in the conservation easement.
So as
They're
the
not all the
farm,
same
as
terms.
the ag committee, though, we should recommend number 3 only be applied to ag.
Right, you could definitely,
But that
Do that.
begs the question about who decides whether it gets this set of terms for ag versus that set of
Exactly.
terms
Yeah.
for not ag.
Well, I think that's the question to try to ask of the town of
one of
Danby.
the trade-offs.
How they
Yeah, it
do
would
that.
be very interesting to see what they have to say about that.
Do you have a conservation board too? They.
they have a conservation advisory council.
Yeah. I'm
That
wondering
does
if-
the
if
work.
Caroline has, I would think that if you had a Caroline and conservation advisory group, they would not want you to restrict them out of this.
Right.
so. Well, I just wanted to point out that we only have 5 minutes left. This has been great discussion. I have attempted to capture, yeah, it's very complex. I have attempted to capture it in the notes and I will welcome corrections and feedback on those. Ken, did you want?
I'd just like to see if added, and I don't know if it's a separate thing or added to the PDR part here, the leasing of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does anybody wanna make an amendment to my motion or should we put it to vote? Because 2 of the 3 of these
That's
involve
on the
the
floor.
town. It's on the floor. The 2 of the 3 of these involve the town.
It's not on the floor until somebody seconds it, so.
Yeah, Kelly.
Cal did,
Did it.
Cal did?
Yeah.
yes.
So that we could discuss it.
You have to
Yeah.
speak louder, Cal, I'm not
Sorry.
picking up on your words.
So
So if it's been moved and seconded, then Just have a vote.
Okay, let's take a look.
Just hang on, I gotta figure out where I put that in the note. Aha, okay. All in favor?
Can you read the?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, what were we talking about? Greg made a motion that the Ag Committee recommend that the town board appoint the building or code person as the monitor or enforcer of easements annually. And then that also would mean then that the town would be the entity holding an easement.
Optionally holding these. I mean, it's the town, it's
Well, yeah, you better tighten up the language. So in other words, if the town is not holding the easement, then the rest of the motion is moot. If the town is holding the easement, then what's up for our recommendation, our vote, if you will,
Well,
is whether to designate
the
the.
tools aren't black and white that the state provides us. So I motion that the town have that resource available to hold easements, not must hold easements.
Well,
The code enforcement officer might refuse to do the work.
Yeah.
They can
You're gonna
refuse to do the
follow-
work, who's their boss?
Well,
Okay,
the
let's
problem
take a
is the code enforcer position was empty for a while, because it was really hard to find somebody. So,
I think there's, I mean, that just comes to my mind too. So,
It's a hard thing to hold the easement. It's not easy.
Well, then we might as well take two tools out of our toolbox, cause it says town in options 2 and 3.
But 2 and 3 are different than number 1.
Well, so is the question
So if
before
you
us
did, when
to eliminate 2
when
and
you brought
3?
this up was under number 1, and then we've had 2 and 3 since then. And we are, and so
I didn't.
2
bring up
and
this
2 and
one.
3
I apologize.
actually are town programs. So it's not really a debatable point.
My motion isn't about 1, 2, or 3. My motion is about the town holding easements for ag programs.
Oh, it's true.
Can I make a friendly amendment to your motion? That we, as the Ag Committee recommend to the town board that they investigate the practicality of having easements held by the town.
So the
So
town
more
can be-
experts figure out what they're doing in Danby, figure out what is,
Well, I think
How
that
it
town
makes
for
it-
the ag committee to make recommendations about ag stuff.
all right, then maybe we need to get a little more information to give. the-
that, I think I'm still feeling, Greg, okay.
Yeah.
So wait, so what am I putting up for vote though? Are we putting up for vote the idea of
Town holding.
the town holding easements? Or the idea of the code officer being the monitor if a town is holding an easement? Cause that was the original, your original resolution was if the town holds the easement, that we recommend that the code person or building person for the town be the enforcer.
For any such programs now or in the future.
Yes, but I
It's not
think
just
we're,
about these 3 things, it's about,
So I'm going to move that we table this motion.
well, I guess we're gonna vote on it first.
No,
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 table
we
it.
put a table, we vote on the table.
I will second that if that's the appropriate move to make next.
yes, it is.
All right, then I
So
second.
now do we call a vote on the tabling
The
now?
town is.
And then if we do call a vote on the table,
okay,
and
It
then
would
it's
seem that
tabled,
the town
we
is
bring it up
only
next.
deed that they could put whoever they want to in charge. They can hire somebody else, they could ask the zone guy to do it. I wouldn't worry about who was doing it if they're holding it.
I
So
think
can we
this
call
needs
for a
to
vote
be
on the
cooked.
table?
so, okay, so the resolution, Don moved to table this for now, Pete seconded it.
Now we vote on the table.
Sorry,
You vote on tabling it. That's
You
all we're
vote-
voting on.
yes, so that's what I'm asking. So, are all in favor of tabling?
Can I ask you a question? I just
Any-
wanna understand parliamentary procedure here, because you called for a vote on something. And then we were supposed to vote.
I thought that's what we were just doing.
The idea of tabling it is that I think a lot of us are on the boat of being curious and sympathetic about your idea and being like, yeah, that might be the way to go, but not thinking we're there yet.
We need, that's,
make
we
the
want more
recommendation.
time to discuss.
Where if
We're
we
just
vote
not.
on it now, then I'm gonna have to say no.
Okay, well, let me ask you this
I'm not
question.
ready. If we table it and bring
We're
it.
gonna make another motion then. Can we make
Okay.
a motion that all the tools be available?
Wait, okay, so I also need like remedial parliamentary procedure training here. Let me just be clear about that. So, and I want to make sure that I don't get in trouble for what I'm writing in the.
Another motion on top of a motion, because he taped.
Yeah, you can't.
So,
That's
Oh,
true.
really?
But you can start a new motion now.
I am.
But
I'll start a
the point that. we're
I'll start a new one,
Sorry,
we'll
hang on.
eliminate the other two, how's that?
The point that we're looking for on parliamentary procedure is there was not a motion on the floor. You would, Eric was trying to get clarification. We were still massaging that motion. And so I moved that we table the discussion until for another, so when we want to bring it off the table again.
Right.
So that's where we are. You can have another motion if the chair doesn't adjourn the meeting before you get a second.
I think it'd be pretty civil.
Yeah.
Should do it here, it takes presidential privilege.
Let's leave it up on the table.
Not voted up or down.
We should take a vote on the table. I agree with
From my
what Don
grade
said.
lesson.
I seconded it.
okay, Pete
Let's take a
seconded.
vote on
We're
this.
voting on tabling the motion and then we are going to adjourn the meeting and we will pick this
Depending
up.
on the owner.
Oh,
Yeah. If we don't table it, it's still gotta move on.
That's true. That's true.
I second your motion to adjourn.
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Let's
you.
vote to table this goddamn thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're voting. And I've lost, yeah.
The county's tagging farmland protection plan. Does that get reviewed or revisited on a regular basis or?
Yeah,
what kind of basis?
it's 8 years old now, and I think we'll review it at 10.
And if the town of Caroline has a
Nobody,
plan
right.
before that 10-year, or by that 10-year, is that included in that process?
Oh, I wanted to get this
Reviewing
back
it
to
and
Will
then,
Law.
like, discussing and incorporating it and stuff.
So the current map that they have for 6 months. we get something different.
So this is not.